The Diaries is made possible by Diaries Plus members. And guess what? That could be you. That's right. If you're enjoying our regular episodes, shorts, interviews, our And Then What series on public lands, or a mix of it all, please consider becoming a Diaries Plus member. It's ad-free listening, but maybe more importantly, it's about knowing that you've stepped up to support something you believe is worthwhile and the delight of something you want to see in your feed, something you believe needs to be there, because that's how Diaries Plus members feel. Come power the show. The link is in the show notes. Thank you. Skylar, you're in your 20s. You're getting after it. I always love hearing about what you are doing on the weekends. But I'm curious because I think younger people go through this. Have you ever experienced the you should have been here 10 years ago or 20 years ago phenomenon? Like that. I feel like sometimes older people put that on the younger generation where it's like they sort of pass this lingering feeling that the next generation sort of gets the short end of the stick.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I have felt that. I read Edward Abbey at a very impressionable age, and I think that fed this sense that I really missed a bus to the good old days, like a long time ago. And I think sometimes I get the feeling that I missed out on some sort of golden age of the outdoors. And it almost feels like we've lost something vital since then, and we might never see it again. With that all being said, though, I will admit that nostalgia is history with the heart I just rounded off. And maybe some ways today is actually a bit better.
Yeah. I think it's a funny thing because I look at it and, having kind of had my life wrapped up in the outdoors for 25 years, I'm actually not sure that that's really the case. Things were always better back then. The other day Beck and I were riding mountain bikes, and we were riding up this old trail we used to ride down. And it's great to ride up, but you're like, this is boring. And we used to ride this all the time on the way down. And we were talking about how many trails we had to ride right now and how much the community was actually investing time and money and effort into making these incredible trails in our backyard. The bikes are better. I was like, man, we're living in a great time for mountain biking. And you climb a lot still, and I get jealous of your climbing situation. There are more routes, there's more information, there's more information about how to get better at climbing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Whenever I go climbing now, even if it's some rugged remote thing that's sitting way out in the Cascades, there's probably a trip report or two about it online. And from the training perspective, we just have such better insights and better tools at our disposal. You could probably find an incredible climbing gym in Wichita, Kansas, right? You can train wherever you are and have a good time. So I get that. I think that that's a really good point. I think that this is actually a great time to be doing the things that we love in a lot of ways. It's just different and maybe a bit more complicated.
I think that's probably true. I think our fringe activities bump up against more complex systems than they used to, like government, politics, class, big business, climate change, in a way that I'm not sure that they used to. I think there's one sport in particular where those complexities, the frictions they create, have had an undeniable impact.
Skiing, snowboarding, unlike mountain biking or climbing, it would be hard to make the case that we are living in a banner moment. It's hard not to look at the experience, the lift lines, parking nightmares, $200 tickets, housing crisis in ski towns, and get the sense that something is amiss, that our ski hills are closer to Disneyland than shared community spaces. The simple pleasure of sliding over snow has become no longer so simple.
How did this come to be? And the answer to that question is complicated. It involves rampant capitalism, a killer product, shifting culture, and shrinking snowpacks. And we're going to touch on all those things. But maybe the more important question might be, does it have to be that way? There's no going back in time, but does it have to be this way moving forward? In an age of corporate consolidation, private equity, is it possible to remake the business of skiing in a better way?
Today, we bring you part one of our two-part series, A Snowball's Chance. This is a story of how a high school teacher, a housing appraiser, and a local home builder launched an effort to put one of America's most beloved ski resorts back into the hands of its community.
Their efforts snowballed and put them on a path to collide with Wall Street players, the specter of climate change, and the looming reality that the simple joy of skiing and snowboarding is no longer a simple business to run. I'm Fitz Cahall.
I'm Skylar Perwins.
You're listening to the Dirtbag Diaries.
I would say that we have a lot of characters on the mountain, just a real happy, positive place, you know?
I moved here for this mountain. My kids were born and raised here because of this mountain.
There's just this divide between the haves and the have-nots that's getting even worse.
If we buy the mountain, we're going to own it forever. The community is going to own it forever. We're never giving it back. We're never selling it.
I could drop my little kiddos off at preschool and kindergarten and get up and take 6 laps on Northwest and get back down in time to pick them up and do the other 20 and a half hours of the day. And it made me a better mom, you know? My name's Carol Carson, and my nickname is Ski Mum, like a ski bum.
Carol, also known as Ski Mum, is a legend and fixture at Bachelor.
To quote Warren Miller, he talked about how we had a special snowpack because we're the 45th parallel. And so to get these weather events, and I hold up air quotes, weather events, because we don't say the R word, but basically it consolidates the snowpack. So then as we get into the springtime, we get these freeze-thaw cycles, we get the corn snow cycle. So we have a really long snowpack.
So, a couple details. Bachelor is actually a volcano. It's 30 minutes outside of the bustling community of Bend in Central Oregon. It sits atop the Cascade Crest, completely exposed to strong winds and powerful storms that sweep across the Pacific Northwest in the winter. It's actually the only major Cascade volcano with a lift basically to its summit. Because it's a volcano, from its summit you can ski in any direction, but in the winter months, the upper mountain is closed more often than not due to visibility and winds. The weather vibe changes by mid-March.
There's a whole new flock of people who come just for springtime. And, you know, you've got the guy who does the short skis, who blows bubbles, and he wears a suit, you know, and he has a glittery helmet. Or there's Josh reports, right?
Good morning, Central Oregon. This is Josh coming at you with another video on the Snow Update on an absolutely gorgeous day up here on the mountain after a stormy day yesterday. Things cleared out today, and it is absolutely...
There's another guy, Jacques, who he wears a different onesie all the time, and the park kids love him because he was really good with the VHS, and he would always go through park and record the kids and make movies. And so, a real proponent for that youthful, athletic, accomplishing thing. Skiing's great because it's not necessarily something that is easy, but it's beautiful and you accomplish, and it's a community because you get to ride the chair together. And so, yeah, I would say that we have a lot of characters on the mountain and just a real happy, positive place, you know. Bachelor's pretty special that way. There's a good vibe at Bachelor.
So Bachelor has its devotees. The mountain encouraged that community. On Valentine's Day, they'd host speed dating on their red chair, which is this really old, classic two-seater lift. There was a committed community in Bend. There were chargers, there were people that were riding the park, Olympic hopefuls, retirees, and young families. Did you go to Bachelor a lot as a kid?
Yeah, it was like a special treat. Especially growing up as a snowboarder.
Yeah.
I just had so much fun out there, and I loved Bend. It wasn't really a destination mountain the same way a place like Telluride, Palisades, or Aspen is. But for Pacific Northwest families like my own, Bachelor was a perfect long weekend destination. Here's Chris Porter.
I had parents who were like, yeah, you're not doing sports. You're going to go work. And by the way, you're going to work at a ski and snowboard shop. My first ever job in the gray market smuggling snowboards in Burberry boxes over to Japan. And it was one of those snowboards that I got to keep that probably created my best lasting memory on Mount Bachelor. And that was at the ski school and getting to meet friends where we all exchanged phone numbers and email addresses at that point on one of the trail maps, writing it down, became pen pals, and our families met up to go skiing again.
Chris lives in Sun River, a resort community just south of Bend, and he's lived in the region for almost his whole life. He teaches at a local high school, and on the mountain, people know Chris, and Chris knows people.
There's G-Dog, right? That's
Where?
G-Dog, huh?
That is.
G-Dog!
Woof, woof, G-Dog!
Hey, what's happening? What's happening?
What up, man?
Are you guys cruising or bruising?
Bruising.
Both.
Good to see you, man. We're just trying to create a gathering.
All right, well.
Yeah, the movement has begun.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, woof woof to my boy Chris Parker, who's gonna own this place.
Even Chris's dog, Pepper, is sort of a low-key celebrity. The local brewery was brewing a special pepper porter while I was in town. As we spend the day hunting powder stashes and carving wind-loaded bowls, Chris shared his experience, and while the joy and stoke were ever present, there was also this sense of sadness hovering underneath it. Over the noise of the lodge, we chatted.
What's funny is, all those great memories you have of skiing as a kid in the 90s, the 80s and 90s, I don't think anyone's like, oh, the industry's getting better today. I don't think anyone would say that, where back then, everyone was pretty optimistic about it. They loved it. Skiers were running the mountains for skiers. And so you felt connected when you're up there. You felt like, hey, I'm up here with my own lines. It's my mountain. I have a little piece of it.
Back in the day, all the staff was excited to be there. We had lifties for years, like Hollywood and Paco. Those guys never bought a beer in this town in their entire lives here, right? I mean, they'd go down and everybody knew them instantly.
This is Dan Cochran, another local. He inspects homes for a living and recently connected with Chris over a shared passion for Bachelor and community.
Mount Bachelor was a special treat for me growing up in the mid-Willamette Valley. So I started snowboarding in 1984. Mount Bachelor started renting snowboards, and Dad would bring us over here on spring break, and it was amazing. So for me, I couldn't wait to move closer to the special treat. That took me to 1993, and I've been here for the most part ever since. Things have changed with work from home, but back in the day, to live in Bend, Oregon, we all took a pay cut. Everybody celebrated it. You were broke, but we were proud to be a part of that endeavor, But it's such a great place to live. We all have figured out over time how to make it work here. So I moved here for this mountain. My kids were born and raised here because of this mountain. That's the story of a countless number of people.
So Skylar, Mount Bachelor Ski Resort does not magically sprout lifts or lodges. Break it down for me. Who owns this place? How did the ski resort come to be? What's the history of the place?
So Mount Bachelor is founded by a guy named Bill Healy in 1958. He's a former 10th Mountain Division ski trooper, and he gets a permit from the Forest Service. He's got $75,000 from his furniture business. They get a couple rope tows going and one lift, and a few local business owners help with the investment. A day ticket is $3, which is like $35 in today's money.
So it's a deal. $35 for a day ticket?
Yeah, good deal. Over the next couple decades, the resort grew into a regional destination, but Bill kept the community in mind.
You came in and you bought furniture from Bill Healy, you got a share of stock. The reason he gave that stock away is because he said, this got out of hand quickly. It was built by skiers for skiers, and now we have the entire Pacific Northwest and beyond coming to visit us. So if you have to deal with vacation brain, you should be compensated for it. For all the influx of tourists who are coming to our backyard and enjoying what we thought was our own little treasure that now we have to share. Now you get to share in the risk, but you also get to share in the reward. And you should be compensated for having to put up with all the visitors. It was his mentality. He put it with a little bit more humor than I am, but he wanted everyone to share in the rewards of the mountain and was very community-minded.
The mountain helped drive Bend's economy, which was recovering from the crash in the timber industry. Healy didn't push for on-mountain accommodations, so visitors would drive to the town's restaurants and hotels. In 1993, Bill Healy passed away, and in 1998, Powder Corps, a private company, approached the board with an offer to buy the mountain. It was met with much debate and concern for how an outside entity would manage the mountain, but eventually the offer was accepted.
Starting in 2001, Powder purchased it, and they're out of Park City. So some of the jobs that used to be here in the executive suites are no longer here. Decisions are made off of here. We see approximately $20 million net revenue that's shipped out of here to Park City right now. That's a big chunk of money, right? There are locals that just don't buy passes anymore. People want a soul. Right? They want a soulful experience, and if they're feeling like they're just another cog in the wheel or just another number, another ticket holder, that doesn't feel so great. That doesn't feel that special.
So, Dan's talking about this soulful experience. It's funny to think of a place having a soul, or like a ski resort having a soul, but what has happened to that soul of Mount Bachelor?
Well, to understand what's happening at Bachelor, we need to understand where the soul of skiing in North America at large came from. It's an origin story born decades ago in simpler times, and we asked Heather Hansman, journalist and author of Powder Days, Ski Bums, Ski Towns, and the Future of Chasing Snow, a bona fide expert in the history of skiing, to help us roll back the clock.
After World War II, when a lot of the 10th Mountain soldiers came back and had seen what ski areas and kind of ski infrastructure in Europe looked like and wanted to have that in the US. So they started looking for places where they could build ski resorts in the mountains, really across the US, but in the kind of western half of the US. 40s to the 70s was really kind of like the big time that ski resorts were getting built in the US. And that kind of, they evolved over that time period. There were some kind of rope tow ski areas before the war. People were skiing before that, but it kind of had this explosion. The technology had changed. There was kind of a bigger middle class. People had more money.
They have more time for recreation too. And so ski resorts are popping up all across the US, not just in the Mountain West. New England, the Midwest, the Southwest. Americans have time and money and need something to do with it. It picks up steam, and snowmaking technology helps even out the seasons. We're building world-class resorts. Snowboarding blows up, ushering in a new counterculture. In the 1980s, there are some tough winters and rising costs, and corporations like Intrawest and Vail realize that they need to move way beyond the mom and pop mentality if they're going to survive. By the 90s, corporations like Vail and Intrawest started buying up mountains, bundling them together, and reshaping the sport into something bigger and a little less local.
I worked at Beaver Creek right after college, so I moved to Avon, and that was 2005. In those next couple of years when I was living there, Vail had been based there in Avon, and the corporation started and they moved everything to Broomfield, and it kind of became this bigger organization that was more than just a couple local ski areas.
After the break, we hear the unlikely story behind Chris and Dan's meeting and the radical idea they set in motion.
I was on a run the other day, and I turned onto a little spur trail I hadn't been down before, and boom, there was this giant cedar tree. It was over 100 years old, and I thought, dang, you've seen a lot since you're a little seedling, and it made me appreciate all the trees around me. Sure makes the world a better place. That's just one of the reasons why Oboz Footwear has been committed to planting trees for each pair of hiking shoes sold. As a certified B Corporation, Oboz cares about their impact on the planet and invests in a number of initiatives that aim to restore the natural environment. Since 2007, they've helped plant over 6.6 million trees. You might even be able to see some of those trees in Oregon, where Douglas fir trees are planted to restore areas affected by wildfire. Thanks, Oboz, for supporting the show, but more importantly, thanks for planting trees. To find your next pair of footwear, check out obozfootwear.com/lovehiking. Oboz Footwear. Love hiking. Deception Pass State Park is one of my favorite places to visit at this time of year. We do it, I think, almost every year. I'm not alone in that. It is one of the most popular parks in Washington State. The trail running is perfect. There are Doug firs. There's views of the Salish Sea. And we even watched a partial eclipse there. It was pretty sweet. The kids love hiking along the beach. It's It's all just very Pacific Northwest. The Washington Discover Pass is your key to accessing Washington State's parks like Deception Pass, recreation sites, natural areas, and more. When you purchase a Discover Pass, you aren't just buying a parking pass, you're helping care for public lands. You're directly supporting conservation and recreation opportunities. You're keeping bathrooms open and trails maintained. You're caring for forests and protecting seashores. Our state lands belong to all of us, and the Discover Pass helps us protect and enjoy them together. So get your Discover Pass at discoverpass.wa.gov. Bikes bring me so much joy. Seriously, it's like my little 7-year-old self comes out to play when I get on a bike. Whipping around a swooping turn on my mountain bike or powering out hills on my road bike is just fun. I just love it. It feels like freedom. For 17 years, Kuat Racks has been making racks that help you get your bike where you want to be. And as bikes have evolved, which they've done a lot, Kuat has continued to innovate alongside the bikes we ride. They just released the Piston Ion Rack, which is specifically designed for e-bikes, and with a large family of racks from no-frame contact hitch racks to roof racks to tailgate pads, Kuat delivers its signature style without compromising on function. Check them all out at kuatracks.com. Kuat, because you love your bike. Okay, there's really only one way to get in shape for bike packing, and that's to go bike packing. And the same is probably true for backpacking, because it's hard to put in the big days. I just got back from an awesome week-long trip. It was a push between the amount of miles and the altitude. And one of the things I did is I brought along Kachava. Kachava is a whole body meal shake that keeps your body and mind nourished all day. With 2 scoops of Kachava, you get 85 plus superfoods, nutrients, and plant-based ingredients. So not only was I getting 25 grams of plant-based proteins to kind of feed the legs, I'm also getting adaptogens and super greens, which I think are really important for me. Added bonus, there's no artificial flavors, colors, or sweeteners. Kachava has 6 flavors to choose from. My favorite is chocolate because, it's frickin' chocolate. Your future self will thank you. Go to kachava.com and use the code DIARIES for 15% off your next order. That's Kachava, KACHAVA.com, code DIARIES for 15% off. Go check it. So Vail came from local roots, but I don't remember them being huge in the early 2000s. Why are they so important to what's going on at Bachelor?
Vail's important because they set the precedent for a different approach in the business of skiing. The Vail ski area itself nearly went bankrupt in the 90s, and a private equity firm, Apollo Global, acquired the company in 1992. 5 years later, they went public with it. With a profit motive cemented into the structure, they began to expand. Breckenridge and Keystone purchased from Ralston Purina, the pet food company, and the attempted purchase of A-Basin, which is shot down by the DOJ for violating antitrust laws. Undeterred, the company sets its sights on a gold rush out west. They round out their portfolio a bit, buying a hotel chain and Heavenly in Lake Tahoe by the time that Heather is running lifts in Avon in 2005.
And we all know what happens to the financial institutions not long after that.
That's right. 2008 hits Vail hard, dragging their stock price down 45%. But they still manage a revolutionary move right in the middle of all this: the Epic Pass. When previously skiers had to choose which single resort they would be visiting or else buy day passes while on vacation to other resorts, now, for about the same price as a season pass at one resort, the Epic Pass granted you a set number of days to resorts under the Vail brand.
So did this help them get out of the 45% stock price hole?
Well, considering that in the next decade they acquire North Star and Kirkwood and Tahoe and then hop over to Utah for Park City, Australia for Perisher, and finally Canada for the crown jewel of North American skiing, Whistler Blackcomb, I'd say they were doing pretty good. Up until 2008, there had been some competition. Boyne Resorts actually held more resorts than Vail through these years, but they didn't capture the same volume of skier days since Vail's resorts were larger and more popular. Crucially, none of these other companies were publicly traded or offered the same kind of destination skiing incentive that the Epic Pass could.
But was it only a matter of time before someone else stepped into the ring?
Yep. In 2017, Alterra entered the game.
Vail has like a metric for what kind of resorts they would buy, and it has to be like within a certain, like distance of a major airport. There had to be like some metrics for what they would choose, and then all of a sudden it felt like that was kind of off the table, and it was a free for all. For a couple of years there, everything was going.
Okay, so now Alterra is on the scene, but how can a newcomer compete with such a heavyweight like Vail? I mean, they're way off the back.
Well, Alterra didn't just materialize out of the ether. It was the result of a partnership between a private equity firm and the family that owned Aspen, which was in direct competition with Vail. In 2017, the partnership acquired Intrawest Resorts, which included Steamboat, Palisades, and Winter Park, as well as some resorts in Quebec, West Virginia, Vermont, and the world's largest heli-skiing outfit in Canada. 2 days later, they bought Mammoth, June Mountain, and Snow Summit in California, so now they own 3 of arguably the 6 most popular ski areas in the country. A few months later, they buy Deer Valley and follow this up with a name, Alterra Mountain Company.
But Vail still has the Epic Pass, right? That's their advantage.
Well, they did, but in January of 2018, Alterra drops the Icon Pass, which gives riders access to all 12 of Alterra's properties as well as 9 other partner properties.
This is a proper blizzard of action, when you think about this. At this point in 2018, the Icon Pass gave access to 21 different destinations. And how many was the Epic Pass?
Vail ramps up their purchasing in 2018 too, and they acquire 4 more resorts in just that year, bringing their ownership total to 19. But the pass itself, through partnership agreements and the like, gives you access to 61 destinations globally.
That sounds like world domination. So after that, do things slow down, or now that now that they've bought up all these things, what happens next?
It sort of slows down, but as of writing this, the Icon Pass grants access to 18 partner resorts and up to 7 days at 42 other locations. So a total of around 60 destinations. Epic gets you access to 42 Vail resorts and another 40 or so partnerships. This amounts to the 2 companies controlling 14% of the resorts in the US. But this percentage is a bit misleading since they control some of the largest and most visited resorts. It's speculated that these 2 companies own over half the annual skier visits in the US. Of course, Alterra is a private company, so their numbers aren't published publicly. Vail's publicly disclosed it owns 20% of North American skier visits.
I think it's also worth noting that the Icon and Epic Passes, you can bash them all you want, but clearly this is a product that a lot of people were interested in. At face value, they are kind of an awesome product if you're a skier or a snowboarder. They are, in a lot of ways, especially when they were first offered, they were a lot cheaper than a week of skiing at another resort, right? It sort of opened up a lot of different travel options. It made it more affordable, and it was a no-brainer on the consumer level.
That's kind of fair. Can I ask an old guy question here? Can you explain private equity?
Okay, old guy answer here. That's a great question. So Vail is a publicly traded company, right? Its goal is to make as much money for its shareholders as possible. You and I could go buy stock in Vail. It's publicly traded, right? Alterra Mountain Company is a company owned by KSL, which is one of the world's largest private equity firms, and the Crown family, which owned Aspen. You and I cannot invest in Alterra, not unless we win the lottery or make a serious change in our careers, right? Private equity is a managed fund. High net worth individuals, people with realistically tens of millions of dollars, probably even more, that kind of cash laying around, they invest in this kind of fund. And that fund uses that money to go buy other businesses. Private equity basically figures out how to maximize the profit in the businesses it buys, and then in about 6 to 10 years, they sell off those businesses to pay back their investors. Private equity rarely has to think more than a decade out, and they don't necessarily need to make a healthy business. They need to make one that looks good on paper.
So that means a company like Alterra is being built to be sold?
Yeah. The investors will want their money back in the not-so-distant future, and the way to do that is to sell. And Alterra certainly knows that they're also playing chicken with the elephant in the room.
And what exactly is this elephant?
There are fewer skiable days due to climate change, and that problem is only going to get worse in the coming decades.
So who or what would buy something so big with those seemingly large risks?
That's a great question. It could be a bigger hospitality company, like maybe a Hilton, right? They're 10 times the size of Alterra in terms of like the number of hotels and sort of destination resorts they own. But there's also these sovereign wealth funds. They're investment arms of countries like Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, and they control trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars. And they like shiny things. UAE's sovereign wealth fund recently purchased the McLaren F1 racing team for $5 billion. The UAE cycling team has won the Tour de France 4 of the last 6 years. I mean, adding some of the world's best ski resorts to a portfolio, we're speculating here, but that thought, if it's crossed my dirtbag podcaster mind, certainly someone at Alterra has had that thought.
Wow, it's crazy how complicated and far-reaching this has all gotten.
Yeah, it's gotten so complicated.
Ski resorts are kind of unique in the outdoor sports experience because like you are kind of confined to the infrastructure of the place. But I think I think this is true for myself, and I think, true for a lot of other skiers, that we still think we're sort of like independent and soulful and like doing it for ourselves, even though we're kind of like baked into chairlifts or like into that piece. So I think that there is some tension there, and that you're doing this thing that is in a lot of ways highly individualized, but you're doing it within a company and like in a place that you don't control. When you kind of like break that fourth wall of like, this experience that I think I'm having for myself is actually really dependent on this commercial infrastructure. And I think that's part of why the like resort consolidation stuff feels icky, is because I think a lot of those places used to feel like they had, person, like maybe like being a Keystone skier meant something.
In some ways, where you skied was like rooting for a team. It had a personality, and when you associated with a place, it rubbed off on you a little bit.
I 100% buy that analogy. It is totally like being a fan of a team.
And conglomeration, in a way, has diluted those unique personalities of each resort.
I'm from Massachusetts, and when I was 21, I like drove my car to Colorado to like go be a skier. And that was sort of this like narrative arc that I'd seen happen in ski movie, like Aspen Extreme and like all these stories that I wanted to be a part of. And then, when I got there, the reality was kind of like that, but I was also scanning lift tickets for $7 an hour for like a corporation. So I think there's always been tension in that.
And recently, those tensions have begun to spill out into public view across the country. Park City ski patrollers went on strike last year after Vail turned down their request for $2 an hour raise to keep up with inflation. Pass holders revolted at Stevens Pass after the Vail-appointed mountain manager fired ski patrollers who tried to unionize, which resulted in a mountain that couldn't get open on a regular basis. Salt Lake locals blame the icon for the traffic that has almost permanently snarled the Little Cottonwood Canyon, which is home to Snowbird and Alta. Across the industry, resorts have struggled to hire staff as wages rise.
Ski patrol, they're like, you chose to be here. This is a fun job. You can leave anytime. Like, we don't have to pay you that much. And that, I think, is inherently not true, especially in jobs like that, where you need to have, medical training and you're potentially putting your life on the line, throwing bombs and that kind of thing. But I think a lot of those places really devalued their workers.
And on top of it all, with the rise of Airbnb, second homes as investment properties for the wealthy, and remote work, the towns that hold these resorts are now some of the priciest in the country.
Because part of the appeal is like the aesthetic of the place. There's often moratoriums on like how you can build, how high you can build, how much density you can have. And then there's housing shortages in these places, which is made even more drastic by the fact that a lot of them are second home destinations, and that the price that people can pay for real estate isn't directly related to the cost of living or the cost of wages in places. There's just this like divide between the haves and the have-nots that's getting even worse. Money is getting consolidated kind of in those like upper pieces, and like the people on the ground are kind of like just getting by or scraping by or living, 8 deep in a double wide to make it work. It can be sort of like bloodless when the management is removed from what's actually happening on the ground. Vail's a publicly traded company, and they're thinking about, I think I looked at it the other day, and it's like they had like 12% revenue growth year over year. And then they're also, nickel and diming ski patrollers over a $2 an hour raise. Like that feels like pretty removed from what you can do to like keep the community and keep the resort healthy on the ground. And I was in Park City recently, and I was talking to the woman who runs the library there. And she was saying that she was like, most of us like don't even ski anymore because everyone's just like working so hard to try and like exist in this place. And that like, I don't know, that feels like, what's the thing where like the snake's eating its tail? Where like we just to like try and make it work, we're not doing the thing that brought us here in the first place.
So what happened with Bachelor? Like, did these same set of problems plague the mountain?
Yes and no. Bend didn't quite struggle with the same housing woes, or at least not to the same level as a tiny mountain town in Colorado. But fairly early in Powder Core's ownership, it became clear that there was little interest in reinvesting in the mountain. The lifts were aging rapidly. In 2008, the mountain's lift management manager quit after numerous incidents, saying, quote, "I can't work for a company that won't take their guests and employees' safety seriously." Not only that, they have been breaking the law on a regular basis, bypassing safety that shouldn't have been while operating to the public. Not doing the proper maintenance, but they've been doing it knowingly. Anytime I brought it up, they would just point the finger at me and tell me that I was just trying to cause trouble.
And since then, even though they've added new lifts, many of the lifts just keep breaking. And in part because it's the weather during the winter, it's a difficult place with big winds, but part of it was just a disregard for maintenance.
And as the prices of lift tickets and season passes climbed, the lifts continued to break down. In recent years, it's come to a head. Chairs have fallen. Northwest, which is one of the premier, was closed for an entire season. Chris described it to me simply as fully depreciated but still in use, which I understood to be accounting speak for they're getting old. Powder Core took away kids ski for free. They were openly censured by Oregon Senator Ron Wyden after Powder Core implemented a Disneyland-style Fast Tracks pass that allowed those willing to pay the ability to cut lines in front of regular pass holders. They joined in on Altera's Icon Pass while simultaneously creating a disastrous parking program.
So there was not a lot of goodwill between the community and Powder Core.
No, but in fairness, many people we talked to for this story noted that John Merriman, the current GM and president who took the job in 2023, seemed to be doing his best. There was a lot of respect given, but overall, the last 20 years, not the best. Powder Core kept taking the profits they made on Bachelor and exporting them out of Central Oregon. Bend and the surrounding region were growing rapidly, and there still seemed to be zero interest in investing in the mountain or the community.
That said, it could be worse.
Yep, from the local perspective, it could be Vail.
Bend has exploded as far as a destination town. And, the word is out.
Here's Dan again.
When I moved here in 93, I think our population was about 30,000 people. Now it's, I think, upwards of 106 plus. So the crowds have changed. The demographics have changed here, and with work from home, we've seen kind of these boom-bust cycles over the last 20 years with the buildup of the great financial crisis in 2008. We saw a massive influx of people come here, and then everybody moved away, and then we've kind of seen the second coming with the COVID boom. And, it's brought pros and cons. You got to be up there real early, to get fresh tracks. The average age of our lift systems is, upwards of 20 plus, and the consistency with which they run is probably the biggest factor up there. Back in the day, they used to have it open from Rainbow, which was furthest east, to Outback, which is your furthest west. First thing every morning, 9 o'clock, all the lifts were operating.
Now, it's hard to count on them. Powder Corps invested in new lifts in 2016, 2019, and in 2023, but the average age of the lifts is still 27 years old, and the chronic problems continue. The lodges are showing their 40-year-old age. It challenges that sense of pride people felt in their community and mountain.
I don't want mediocrity to run the mountain, and I definitely don't want capital expenses to go unaddressed. If we could fund the depreciation so we're not in these situations where we have visitors coming up to the mountain, not having lifts work on like Bluebird powder days or Bluebird spring corn days, and then leaving and saying, I would have been better off staying at Crystal. I would have been better off going to another resort that's on my multi-pass, or even just visiting just for the sake of visiting on a one day. I really want everything to be working. I really want that mindset that says we can continually improve this operation and we can grow into the future without growing our roots. So keep the spirit of Mount Bachelor alive.
And then in August of 2024, Powder Corps decided to put Mount Bachelor up for sale. Buzz erupted in the Bachelor community, and there were two obvious parties that would be interested. Alterra and Vail, fresh off of years of constant jockeying to gobble up what resorts they could. But in that storm of speculation, a group of passionate locals connected over a radical idea.
Chris and I met initially. We've got a local Facebook page actually called Mount Bachelor Conditions, and it's where everybody kind of chimes in and shares what's happening. Recently, it's kind of devolved into, who's parking wrong or terrible drivers on the way up or all these other kind of spurious factors. But when we heard the mountain was being listed for sale, I got on there and I posted something kind of silly like, hey, I've got $20 in a snowboard, who's interested? And lots of commentary jumped in, and I went back later and looked at it, and here's this guy saying something about who wants to do a feasibility study.
I'd been a finance director at the Multnomah Club in Portland, which is about 22,000 members and operates on about the same budget as a mountain. And I thought, if we had a passionate community of enthusiasts that wanted to take on this endeavor, we could structure it similarly. And I said, well, if anyone wants to do a feasibility study, here's my ideas. We could do land trust or 501c3. Let's get it going. From that, our first meeting got going on August 28th. We had the former owners there and some folks from the city government and state government, and they helped us and said, hey guys, if you really want to pull this off as a nonprofit, you're out of time. People are already ahead of the game on this, and it's most likely that people already knew about this deal before you. What you should do is research what a B Corp is. So we started researching a B Corp. Serendipity, the father-in-law of the guy in San Francisco who certifies B Corps, happens to live in Sun River and hang out at Sun River Brewing all the time. Same place that my dog likes to go see her friends. So I talked to him. We were able to get a meeting and establish that yes, a B Corp certification is a good route for Mount Bachelor, and that way we can diversify the stakeholders and protect ourselves from being sued by anybody for not being solely for profit. And that's kind of the cornerstone of where we're at, is if you're going to have a ski resort and operate a facility on public lands, you really need to consider more stakeholders than just the profit stakeholder.
Chris and Dan founded Mount Bachelor Community Incorporated as a B Corp in October of 2024. Local media caught wind of their endeavor, and the news spread like wildfire.
Yeah, the moment it became real was just one of those things like, someone pinched me, is this really happening? And within 24 hours, we had over 2,000 inbound emails and discovered that you can indeed take a Gmail account and ruin it by data usage, because we had so many inbound, I'm in this, I have $500,000 and I want to put 250 into this project. It's like, we don't have anything to invest in. We're still thinking out loud. We have to figure out if this is even feasible first and how to pull this off. And it was just like, yeah, people who had seen us on the news stopping us in the street to say thanks and shake our hand. And I don't think I paid for a drink in town for about 2 months after that.
And it was everything from letters, emails of support to, hey, I've got $500,000 I want to invest, or here's my story of getting married up there, my family's, yada, yada. Like, it was just instant, I don't want to say gratification, but support and understanding of, what Chris kind of coins as lightning in a bottle. Everybody was immediately on this thing and really excited about trying to make this happen as well.
When I saw what they were doing, I got excited and I was like, oh man, this is awesome. I'd love to be involved.
This is Ryan Andrews. Since 2020, he's worked to connect local investors on development projects with an eye to keeping profits within the community.
I'd love to take my skill set and see if I could help put this together. And so I emailed. The email list was one of just thousands of people that came in. And I basically just real quick said, hey, I've been a CFO and raised capital for 10, 15 years. Do you guys have somebody to run your securities offering if you get momentum behind this? And they said, no, let's go get coffee. So I got coffee with Dan, and he and I were just stoked and totally hit it off. And they adopted me pretty quick into kind of the core group to put this whole project together. And so when I saw this initiative to buy Mount Bachelor, I was like, oh man, this is like exactly what we did at Hiatus Homes, just bigger, a lot bigger. And so I was like, we could totally do this. The community could get behind this effort to buy its own mountain back in its own backyard. I've come out and some news outlets and everything have published statements that I've made where I'm like, if we buy the mountain, we're going to own it forever. The community is going to own it forever. We're never giving it back. We're never selling it. Well, that's a really different business model than a private equity fund or a strategic acquirer might take, where a strategic acquirer might come in, buy the mountain, might want to own it for 5 years or 10 years and improve the EBITDA and streamline operations and make some investments and push up ticket prices and increase usage. And then now it's a higher revenue and they turn around and sell it to the next group and get out. That's not our mentality. Our mentality is like, once we own this thing, we should own it forever. When people feel like they have a stake in something, they show up. That's how we're hoping to structure this, both from like a technical standpoint, but also these soft philosophical things that we think will make a really big impact.
The whole idea of a community, minded mountain ownership model is that we create this economy that money is made here and money is spent here and reinvested here. This mountain is not only one of the biggest employers, but it's also one of the biggest revenue generators. And so the security of making sure that the mountain is, running appropriately in line with what the locals want, but also running consistently in a way that, make sure people keep coming here, because if the mountain falls apart and they get these bad reviews, people stop coming back, that affects all of us that live here.
But buying a ski resort takes a lot more than stoke and good vibes. Mount Bachelor Community Inc. would be competing with Vail and Alterra, and while the asking price was never revealed, reports indicate it ranged from 75 to 200 million. That year, Powder Corps also unloaded its East Coast jewel, Killington, in Vermont, for an undisclosed price to local investors. So Ryan got to work.
As I started to get more involved and we started to get on the phone with potential investors, and at times there were people that we talked to them for 30 minutes and they'd want to tell us all about the history of Mount Bachelor and their relation to it, and they're taking a picture off the wall behind them in their home office and showing us what, like, here's me on the mountain. And then people were just really connecting to the idea, and not just like people that are like stoked ski bums, but people that are like, okay, I could write, 7 and 8 figure checks. And that started to be like, whoa, this is real. I think maybe we can pull this off. So we went to the investment banking group and we were like, yeah, we're all fired up. Everybody in the community wants to buy the mountain. What do you guys need to see to let us into the data room, to let us review and basically write an offer?
Wall Street giants JP Morgan Chase had been retained by Powder Corps to broker. JP Morgan Chase, in turn, gets a cut of the proceeds. The team is hoping to gain access to the data room.
What's a data room for someone who didn't go to business school?
It's the financials. It's all the nitty gritty of the business. So a buyer can come in with a bid. And at first, JP Morgan Chase seemed open to it.
They said, okay, here's what we need to see. We need to see, you guys either have X amount of liquidity in a bank account to show that you're real, tens of millions of dollars, or you need to bring in an anchor investor that can do the deal or a big chunk of the deal on their own. We, went back and found a lot of these high net worth and ultra high net worth investors that wanted to be involved. And, they have said great, let's get in the data room. Let's see if we can put this deal together with you guys. We love the community aspect of it. We said, awesome, we did it. And so that's step on the gas, we're just flying.
It was really excited to see that this wasn't just an idea being created in a vacuum, that literally thousands of people immediately responded to this. The other exciting part is seeing that, we have a strong possibility of making this happen, and it is an absolute David and Goliath story. We're seeing a shift. We are seeing a trend shift, and Killington, it was really wild to see them doing this at the same time we were, and all of a sudden, that was announced in the paper, and it's like, oh, we're literally, it's a bi-coastal effort at the same time. So clearly there's something larger at play here that really is meaningful to people.
Next time on A Snowball's Chance.
It was really wild to see them doing this at the same time we were.
Let's talk about climate change. The broader economic impacts of climate are massive and are impacts that are most definitely impacting ski areas.
The three of us on the phone were just so bummed afterwards. We turned around and, wrote a letter and FedExed it straight to the board of directors and chairman of Powder Corp.
The bid window to buy Mount Bachelor is now closed after a nearly year-long fight.
We want to give a special thanks to Chris Porter, Dan Cochran, and Ryan Andrews for taking the time to speak with us, as well as Graham Zimmerman and Heather Hansman for helping round out our view of the skiing world. We reached out to mountain management at Bachelor, as well as Powder, Vail, and Altera for comment. We did not hear back. Our stories come from friends of friends, and from you, our community. If you have a compelling idea for a guest or a story lead, please give us a shout. You can email us at editor@ducktapedandbeer.com. Thanks to folks who have recently become Diaries Plus members, and to those that continue supporting. It's the difference between the show being here and not. Music today is from Disguise, White Flowers, Chill Horizons, Truth Be Told, Cold Storage Percussion, Pat Elm, Fields of Ethera, Holly Hillies, Bread and Burns, Novik Recordings, Dame Asu, and Our Mini Stars. The tracks are courtesy of the artists or Track Club. Jacob Bain and Nis Koto composed our theme song. You can find the artists at our website, dirtbagdiaries.com. This episode was produced by Fitz Cahal, Becca Cahal, as well as me, Skylar Perwins, with editing by Evan Phillips. Illustration is by Walker Cahal. Becca is our executive producer. I'm Skylar Perwins, filling in for Fitz on the credits, and you've been listening to the Dirtbag Diaries. Thanks for tuning in.